So in the first session, I'm going to show you the difference between a clamshell model and a swing-away model. Clamshell models open vertically and close vertically without any sideways movement. Swing-away models open vertically at first and then swing out all the way almost 180 degrees in the other direction, swing back in, and then clamp back down. There's a reason why we make those two different types of models. There's advantages and also disadvantages with both options. In the case of a clamshell machine, as you can tell, it is very quick to open and to shut. So I can open the machine, lay down my substrate or my t-shirt, close it, and repeat very quickly. Do a large volume of production that way very quickly. Disadvantage, when I take a shirt and place it on here, I come very close to the heat plate. Also, depending on the type and size of the plate, I'm going to have radiation from the plate and heat radiation from the plate onto me, the operator. So it might be a little less comfortable. Now we've avoided that by removing the Teflon coating off the machine so the radiation is very minimal. But still, there is the difficulty of putting the shirt or whatever substrate onto the lower plate and remaining away from the heat casting. Takes a little bit of practice and a couple of burnt knuckles that I can testify for. In this case, in the case of a swing away, open the machine, swing it all out, lay down the substrate, close it, swing it back in and close it down shut is 4 instead of 2 movements. So it takes about twice the time to prepare the transfer, minus the time it takes to actually transfer down the 10 or 15 seconds, 12 seconds, 8 seconds it takes for a transfer. So it's about a 50% reduction in your production. Now the advantage of it is, as you can tell, I don't have the direct radiation, heat radiation from the plate. My fingers are sufficiently away from the heat source at any given time so that it is safer, but it takes much longer time to operate. The other advantage is that I can look directly down onto the substrate and make sure that I line it up just right. In the case of a vertical clamshell press, I have to do my preparation away from the press, then take it to the press, and then press it down. So advantages and disadvantages in both cases, for both models. Some people prefer one, some people prefer the other, so we have both. For anything that is shirt related and that requires a repetitive motion and a large volume, people tend to go to a clamshell model because they're used to the operation, they're used to dressing and removing the shirt, and it works much faster that way. You can do a larger number of shirts in a less amount of time, which is not the case with the swing away. Now, the swing away has followers of the application of sublimation, because there it takes much longer to do a transfer, 1 to 6 to 7 minutes sometimes, depending on the type of substrate. And there the little time I lose opening and closing the swing away motion of the press doesn't really bother or doesn't really extend the production time, which is generally not more than just a couple at a time during my day. So that works out fine for an application like sublimation. The other advantage is that as I close my press vertically, the pressure of the entire upper plate, which provides the heat here, comes down simultaneously on all parts of the surface of my substrate. Whereas here, in the case of a clamshell, you have kind of a squeezing motion whereby the back hits first before the front hits. Now, what we've done with this machine in order to overcome that inconvenience is we made that lower plate just a little bit movable, as you can see, so that as soon as the upper plate hits the lower plate automatically adjusts to the upper to give that a very even downward pressure at the time of closure, and you don't have any squeezing motions. But again, there's the pros and the cons for each type of press, both clamshell as well as swing away, with both having their individual applications, and there are supporters for either one or the other. In the first part, we showed you the difference between swing away models, which swing out and back again, and then up and down, and clamshell models, which just swing up and down, and the difference and the advantage of those two. Now we're going to look a little bit more into just the clamshell models, just going up and down. In this case, we'll distinguish three different models: a fully manual, a semi-automatic, and an air automatic model. First, the fully manual model. As the word says it operates fully manually with the operator itself. You manually open the machine, put the shirt on the lower platform, close the machine, and wait for the machine to give you a sign. Let me demonstrate. Turn the machine on. Put the shirt on the lower. Close the machine. I set it to 10 seconds. So we're going to wait for the counter to count down to 10. The machine will give me the inaudible sign. There you go. I now manually open the machine and remove the transfer and the shirt. In the second case, in the air with the semi-automatic machine, the operation is virtually the same. Let me turn this machine on as well. Operator puts the shirt on the lower, closes the machine manually. The counter will count down, the same as with the manual machine, but in this case, when the cycle finishes, the machine will open automatically. I didn't have to create any effort in order to open the machine. This has a great advantage because it takes half the labor out of the manual machine. So it goes quicker, it's easier on the operator, and it's faster. You can do a higher production on that type of machine, semi-automatic. Then the fully automatic machine, let me turn this machine on. The fully automatic machine works almost without effort. In this case, put the shirt on the lower. Now, I'm not pushing the handle down, I'm just really guiding the handle down. The machine will take over, apply the pressure for the set number of seconds, count down to 0, at which point you'll give me an audible sign. Also, open the press. I remove the shirt, I place the next shirt on top of the lower. So it works very fast, easy on the operator, much less operator fatigue, can easily work numerous hours on this machine versus the other ones where the operator has to has quite a workout. So there is a trade-off between these three machines. The less expensive machine, the most expensive, and the one in between. The semi-automatic costs more than the manual, the air automatic more than the semi-automatic. The production out of the machines is higher on this than on the manual, and still higher on the air automatic than on the semi-automatic. The air automatic is a best-selling machine for the reason that a lot of people prefer user friendliness, but also easy on the handle, easy on the arms than the other two machines. But of course, there's a trade-off between price and operator fatigue and user friendliness. When selecting a press, first of all, we looked at the difference between a swing away model and a clamshell model. Swing away, where the plate, the upper plate, swings completely out of of the workspace of the operator in order to give a full view of the lower plate. And a clamshell model which just moves up and down and with the advantage of speed. Then we looked at the different clamshell models. We looked at the manual, the semi-automatic, and the full automatic or the air automatic clamshell model, with the differences there and the trade-off between price and user friendliness or user facility. In this case, we're going to look at another difference, a difference between an analog and a digital machine. Here the trade-off is not user friendliness but it is information. With an analog press, you will have approximate information about temperature setting, pressure, and time. With a digital press, you'll have the exact information on the readout of the display. Let me give an example. Here's the analog press. I set the temperature here with a knob. It reminds me of the old frying pan, where when one points at on/off, and then by turning it, you set it to the desired temperature. Wait for the press to heat up. When the press has reached temperature, the red light at the back will turn off, telling you the machine is ready for operation at that particular temperature. The pressure is set by trial and error. We show. Open the machine, take the shirt, now let's assume I do a plastisol transfer, which takes medium to medium-high pressure. Not enough. So I increase the pressure with the pressure knob back here. It's about right. Now I take the transfer, place it on the shirt, and I'm ready to press. The time is provided with a little digital stick-on timer that I press as soon as I close the machine, and that will beep when the cycle is complete, at which time I manually open the machine, remove the transfer and the shirt. So the information is approximate. Approximate temperature, temperature setting, approximate pressure, and the time with a stick-on digital timer. In the case of a digital press, the information is exact. As I turn on the machine, it will give me the exact readout up to the degree of the degrees Fahrenheit, as well as the timer, the countdown timer. So the timer here, I set to the number of seconds. It's now set to a 10-second transfer. The temperature I can set by moving the digital up and down buttons. In this case, I set it to 380. Then I have additional settings. I have preset buttons. Work a bit like a car radio, where you preset your different radio stations. In this case, you preset the combination of time and temperature, two different settings, plus a number of other settings in the menu, such as a timer, a counter for the particular job you're doing, as well as a total counter, which is embedded inside the menu. So, lots of information, no guesswork. Take the shirt, it's a 10-second transfer, it's a medium side pressure, you set the pressure, the machine will tell you on a scale from 1 to 10 what the pressure is you're currently at. Right now, you're at a pressure, at too high of a pressure, so I reduce it. I'm now at the pressure 7, which is medium high, good for a plastisol transfer. So now I know I'm ready for plastisol. I set it to 10 seconds, which is what the transfer requires. I set it to whatever temperature the transfer requires, and I'm ready to operate. Close the machine, the timer will count down, tell me exactly when the cycle is complete, at which time I open the machine. Analog versus digital. The trade-off between price and information. In the first chapter we've seen how when we pick a press we have to make a distinction first between swing away and clamshell. Then we look at clamshells, we look at the differences between manual, semi-automatic and automatic. Then a separate distinction, we select whether we want an analog or a digital press. So we've gone through all the presses so far. Now in this last part of the series, let's look a little bit at some of the most used and most useful accessories for any type of press. One of the accessories that we include in most of our clamshell machines is what we call a splitter stand. It's about a 6-inch stand that comes with all our clamshell presses. We also have one separate for our swing away press, which is a little lower, but has the same function. Let me show you how that works. It lifts the press up by about 6 inches off the table and allows, through this cantilever construction, allows for the operator to pull the shirt all the way over the lower platen rather than getting stuck about a quarter of the way. What's the advantage of that? Well, when you take a shirt and pull it all the way over it, it nicely sits, the back of the shirt nicely sits underneath the heat plate, away from the heat, so that the operator can work just with the transfer on the top without affecting the bottom. Why is that important? Not so much with plastisol transfers, although even with plastisol, if you put something in front and on the back, you don't want to infringe on anything that's on the back when you print the second one on top, or vice versa. You don't want the two transfers to affect one another. Even more so with sublimation transfers, where you place a transfer on one side. Even if you do a transfer just on one side of the shirt, what typically happens with sublimation is that the gas will penetrate the upper fabric and then print on all the way to the back as well. You want to avoid it as much as possible in order to keep the shirt sellable. So for that reason, having the back of the shirt away from the heat and underneath the plate is very useful. You see also another piece of accessory is this pad protector. A pad protector helps to extend the longevity of the pad itself, which is extremely durable, but will tear and break and get loose here at the corners because of the multiple on and off sliding of the shirt. You can avoid that by putting the pad protector and protect the corners. The other thing the pad protector will do is prevent the ink from penetrating through the material and loosening the glue that holds the pad onto the plate. Furthermore, a pad protector helps with the sliding of the shirt. Let me demonstrate that. Let me first demonstrate how the shirt has a much harder time sliding onto the silicone itself while pulling at the same time on all the corners each time you pull the shirt. Whereas when I do the same operation with the pad protector, it easily slides on and off. Even more, when I use the shirt on the pad protector instead, I can simply move the shirt around and slide the shirt around to the exact position where I want my transfer, always keeping the other side away from the heat source. Pad protectors can be placed either at the bottom, but as you see here, also on the top. Why is the top important? Well, if you never make mistakes, the top is not so important. But if you're like me and once in a while you forget to turn the transfer in the right side up, which means the right side down, then your transfer will stick to the top. It's a hard job to take it off. Whereas here, you just wipe it off. Then the last piece is a little Teflon sheet. Now why is that sheet useful? Well, if you have a transfer or two transfers on one side of the shirt, you can press one transfer and do all your shirts just that one transfer, then come back with the same shirt, cover the previous transfer, and print another transfer on the other side. So let's do a little example. We're going to do an example of a sublimation transfer today on a Chromlux plate with a beautiful German casting, and see how that turns out. We'll do that on the new HT600 with the new controller. First, I'm setting the parameters on the controller. I'm going to set this one to 2 minutes and to 375 degrees. There you go. Now, let's prepare the substrate. Machine is ready. That's the fun part of the business. Overlaid on the design so that the best part of the printout is on the plate. Tape it down with some heat resistant tape so the plate and the transfer don't move, and to avoid any ghosting effect. Ready to go. I used a pad protector to protect the pad against sublimation gases that will otherwise stick to that pad and then transfer onto the next sample, which I want to avoid at all costs. So I'm laying that on the Teflon. Now I also want to avoid having any sublimation against the upper plate, which again will transfer onto the next sample. So I'm going to do two things. One is a bit of craft paper on top, which will catch about 90% of all those excess sublimation gases, and then a Teflon sheet to cover, additionally cover just the surface of the casting, so that definitely I want to keep my upper plate clean. Machine is ready. Double check, got everything in the right order, and I close the machine. The machine will now count down all the way from, in this case, 2 minutes, all the way to 0, and tell me when the substrate is ready, and we'll stay at around 375. In the beginning, temperature will drop just ever so slightly because all that heat is drawn into the metal plate. The way I can avoid any sudden drop of heat also is to preheat the pad by closing the machine first for a couple of seconds, then opening it back up, and then proceed with the sample. At least if it's the first sample. If you do more samples, you do more production, one after another, then you just do that, of course, with the very first one in the morning. So now we wait until the time expires. I've also set the pressure to a scale from 0 to 9. I've set it to 6 medium pressure, which is sufficient for the sublimation transfer. You also see here the counter. I've made 222 transfers so far, and I'm showing you 223. Everything is now on the controller. Nothing is on the machine anymore. There's no on-off buttons anymore. The on-off button is right on the electronic controller and will be the only thing that will show when the machine is turned off. When turned on, I have full access, very intuitive, full access to the control panel. So, the machine's about done. You're going to hear the beep, the audible beep, to say that it's ready to release. There we go. Open the machine and remove the plates. For this part, I'm going to wear my gloves. Remove the substrate, and now I can take